Thought Power, Chapter 3, Thought Atmospheres. The recognition of the presence of radioactivity in the processes of thought, and the realization of the power of thought to exert inductive action at a distance without contact, serves to illuminate what was formerly a dark corner of the streets of human experience, to throw a bright light upon certain places in which objects previously had been seen but dimly, and in which they took upon themselves distorted form. We refer to the phenomena which are generally classed as the thought atmospheres of persons and places. It certainly requires no extended argument to prove that there exists in connection with persons and places a certain subtle influence, which may well be called an atmosphere, of a psychic order, which produces an effect upon persons coming within the field of induction of the persons or places manifesting the atmosphere. These psychic atmospheres were formerly held to be related in some way to the supernatural, or else to be connected with some mysterious and occult powers of the universe which were outside of the realm of ordinary natural laws. But thanks to the persistent and patient labors of the investigators, it is now known that these psychic atmospheres are quite as natural as are the fields of induction of electricity and magnetism, and quite as truly are under natural law and order. They are now recognized as phases of the general phenomena caused by radioactive thought and the inductive action of thought. These psychic atmospheres may be considered as divided into two general classes as follows. One, the thought atmospheres surrounding the person of the individual radiating the thought and accompanying him wherever he moves or travels. And two, the thought atmosphere of places which are caused by the radioactive thought of the persons inhabiting these places, or who have previously inhabited them. Let us now consider each of these two classes in the order in which they are above stated. The thought atmospheres of persons. Each and every person has a thought atmosphere, or aura, surrounding him, which reflects the general character of his thought, his feelings, and his general mental character. This atmosphere or aura is composed of and constituted by the vibrations of his radioactive thought, which are analogous to the vibrations of light, heat, electricity, or magnetism. It is constantly renewed by the mental currents which are pouring out from the mental organism of that person. These thought vibrations of this thought atmosphere more or less affect other persons coming within their field of induction. You know from your own experience and that of others with which you are familiar that when you meet a stranger and have directed your attention to him, you are conscious of a something about him, which produces a certain effect upon you, and which creates in your mind a more or less definite impression regarding him, very often a quite marked feeling of like or dislike. In some cases, even though your attention has not been directed toward the person, that something about him is so strong and active that it attracts and holds your attention and makes you take notice of him. You have shared the experience of many persons when on certain occasions you have been vividly impressed by the entrance of some particular person into a room or office or other place. There has been nothing out of the ordinary in the appearance of the person, or in his dress, carriage, or general manner, but nevertheless you have felt in some way that there is something unusual about him. In some cases, you have experienced at once a marked attraction to, or perhaps a marked repulsion from certain individuals. In other cases, you have recognized a peculiar air of authority about certain persons. Others have seemed to carry with them an atmosphere of success. Others have seemed to be surrounded by a cloud of failure, lack of confidence, etc. Some have seemed to radiate cheerfulness and optimism. Others have seemed to emanate gloom, pessimism, and discouragement. To some, you have felt what may be called an affinity. To others, you may have felt an actual antipathy. Some persons seem to exert a thought influence extending merely to a field immediately around them. Others seem to fill a room with their personality as soon as they enter it, or at least as soon as they direct their attention to the persons in the room. Others still seemingly experience no difficulty in extending their thought radiations so as to influence strongly a large number of people, The whole audience, assemblage, or congregation feels the presence of such a person as soon as he addresses them. Some exceptionally magnetic individuals, some great actors or orators, manifest thought atmospheres composed of thought vibrations so active and powerful that they fairly carry by storm the emotional natures of the immense bodies of people and sweep them off their feet in spite of their reason and will. Some persons impress you at once as being positive, resourceful, self-confident individuals. Others produce upon you the impression that they are negative, weak, colorless, non-resourceful, and lacking in self-confidence. Some are live wires, others are dead ones. You feel this instinctively even before the person says a word or performs an action. It is not exactly as if you think the thing concerning the person in such cases, it is rather as if you feel it in some subtle, indefinable way. If you have ever had the actual experience, you will know that it is more than the suggestion of manner, action, appearance, dress, words, etc. It is something that you feel about the person independent of your reasoning on the subject of his personality. The report seems to come from the emotional region of your mental being rather than from the logical one. When the experiences and phenomena just related are examined in the light of the hypothesis of thought radioactivity and the inductive action of thought, respectively, the whole subject assumes a reasonable, natural aspect. It loses its supernatural or occult garments. When you see that thought, like light, heat, magnetism, or electricity, is radioactive, that it radiates currents and waves of vibratory force in all directions, then the presence of the atmosphere of the person ceases to be mysterious. Likewise, when you perceive that just as a magnetized or electrified body tends to induce a like state in other bodies at a distance from it without direct contact, setting up in them similar vibrations, then you find it quite natural that you should feel in your emotional nature a certain stirring concerning the people you meet. And you also understand more clearly the influence of certain persons over others, over audiences, crowds, congregations, etc. Thought radiation and thought induction give you the key to many experiences and phenomena which heretofore have been deep mysteries to you, and which perhaps you have regarded as uncanny, supernatural, or occult. The thought atmospheres of places. Just as you have noticed that persons have their peculiar atmospheres representing their mental activities, so you have noticed that many places have their particular atmospheres, which by induction register their character upon your mentality and cause you to become aware of the general mental qualities of those who inhabit or occupy them, or who previously have done so. You have noticed that residences, apartments, or rooms frequently produce effects upon which you can be accounted for no ordinary way. Some such places even to emanate cheerfulness, harmony, and other uplifting mental qualities, while others seem to be permeated with a negative, depressing influence, which affects you more or less unless you throw it off in some way. In the same way, certain shops, stores, offices, and other places of business either attract or repel you, either create confidence or distrust on your part, in some subtle way not explainable by their general appearances. It is not too much to say that every place has its own atmosphere, its own character. If you have ever visited a prison or similar place, you have doubtless been struck with the feeling that some subtle, invisible miasma pervades it, rendering you most uncomfortable while within its walls and causing you to experience a feeling of relief after you have left the place. This, even though the institution may be built and conducted according to modern ideas and thus lacking in the depressing suggestiveness of the old, gloomy surroundings. In some hospitals, you have experienced a similar depressing feeling, accompanied by a strong desire to escape from the negative influences manifesting within them. On the other hand, you have experienced the restful, uplifting, peaceful atmosphere of certain churches, cathedrals, chapels, and other places in which persons have habitually manifested the higher forms of thought and feeling. In some libraries, you have experienced the atmosphere of study, deep thought, investigation, and general intellectual activity. In some great places of business, you have experienced the feeling of efficiency, industry, purposeful effort, and careful management. In short, you have found that you catch the spirit of many places visited by you. You know that there are certain places which you like to visit because of their good effects upon you, and other places which you avoid visiting so far as possible because of their usual bad effect upon you. Some places rest you, others tire you. Some rouse ambition and aspiration in you, others cause you to feel depressed and discouraged. Some seem pure and clean to you, while others impress you with a sense of impurity and mental and moral uncleanliness. The explanation of this class of phenomena is found in the hypothesis to which we have called your attention in this book, that of the radioactivity of thought and that of the inductive action of thought, respectively. The fact is that every human mind is constantly emitting radiations or currents of thought vibrations representing the general character of his or her thoughts. These naturally form the thought atmosphere of the places in which such persons dwell or do business. When there are a number of persons continuously present in a place, their combined thought vibrations combine and coalesce and form a composite thought atmosphere. In many cases, the thought of a place is determined by the character of those in authority in that place. Those who impose character and certain lines of conduct upon those under their control. This accounts for the character and atmosphere of stores, shops, offices, etc. But the character and atmosphere of a place is created and determined not merely by the quality of the thought being radiated by those inhabiting it at that moment. The past thought influences are strongly impressed upon many places. These may seem strange to you at first thought, but when you examine similar phenomena in the realm of nature, you will begin to understand the principle at work in the case. There is nothing mysterious, supernatural, or occult in such phenomena. Natural law and order is manifest in them just as in all other natural phenomena. You need not go outside of nature for the explanation. The heat emitted by a stove will remain in a room long after the fire has died out or the stove withdrawn. The subtle odor of a flower, perfume, or of other substances will permeate a place long after those substances have been removed from it. The odor of coffee, cheese, leather, etc. will cling to a store which years before was used for the purpose of storing these articles. Dresser drawers, cabinets, old letters, etc. will retain for many years the fragrance of the perfume which long ago was applied to them or placed within them. Astronomers tell us that the light we now see streaming from some of our far distant stars really was emitted by those bodies many thousands of years ago, and that if one of those stars were destroyed today, its light would continue to travel in space for many thousand years in the future. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "What? You cannot conceive of a charge of cerebricity fastening itself on a letter sheet and clinging to it for weeks while it was shuffling about in mailbags, rolling over the ocean, and shaken up in railroad cars? And yet the odor of a grain of musk will hang around a note or address for a lifetime. Do you not remember what Professor Silliman says in that pleasant journal of his about the little ebony cabinet which Mary Queen of Scots brought with her from France, how its drawers still exhale the sweetest perfumes? If they could hold their sweetness for more than 200 years, why should not a written page retain for a week or a month the equally mysterious effluence poured over it from thinking morrow and diffuse its vibrations to another excitable center?" Professor Draper, illustrating the subtle effects of light, said, "Upon the walls of our most private apartments, where we think the eye of intrusion is altogether shut out and our retirement can never be profaned, there exist the vestiges of all our acts, silhouettes of whatever we have done. A shadow never falls upon a wall without leaving thereupon a permanent trace, a trace which might be made visible by resorting to proper processes. Photographic operations are cases in point. The portraits of our friends or landscape views may be hidden on the sensitive surface from the eye, but they are ready to make their appearance as soon as proper developers are resorted to. A specter is concealed on a silver or glassy surface until by our necromancy we make it come forth into the physical world. Radiant forces are passing from all objects to all objects in their vicinity, and during every moment of the day or night are daguerreotyping the appearance of each upon the other. The images thus made not merely resting upon the surface, but sinking into the interior of them. They're held with astonishing tenacity and only waiting for a suitable application to reveal themselves to the inquiring gaze. You cannot then enter a room night or day, but you leave on going out your portrait behind you. You cannot lift your hand or wink your eye, or the winds stir a hair of your head, but each movement is infallibly registered for coming ages. The pane of glass in the window, the brick in the wall, and the paving stone in the street catch the pictures of all passers-by and faithfully preserve them. Not a leaf waves, not an insect crawls, not a ripple moves, but each motion is recorded by 1,000 faithful scribes in infallible and indelible scripture. Professor William Denton says, all bodies, organic bodies more especially, are transmitting their influences continuously to surrounding objects, the tendency of which is to bring these objects into a similar condition to their own. Not more certainly does a rose diffuse its fragrance than human beings dispense their influence wherever they go. We are each surrounded by an atmosphere which can convey to sensitives the impression of our character and condition. Wherever the foot touches the ground, the impression of the man is left upon it, so that even the dog, by means of it, can track his master hours after he has passed over the ground. Houses become so imbued with the influence of the people that live in them that sensitive persons can feel that influence as soon as they enter. And if it is unpleasant, they have a feeling of uneasiness, of positive unhappiness, as long as they are subject to it. Dr. Haddock says, frequented rooms store up this mass of human influences. The kitchen borrows the cook's character. The dining room registers the public family life. Sleeping chambers especially record the nameless history of undiscovered hearts. The writer is convinced that he has dimly sensed something of the personality of former occupants in various houses where he has lived. It is a common thought that rooms may be pervaded by the presence of absent people at one time familiar there. The atmosphere of a vacated saloon must differ vastly from that of a reputable theater, an art museum, a college, or a church. It is very probable that the mystery surrounding many so-called haunted houses might be dispelled by an inquiry conducted along the lines of the hypothesis of thought radioactivity and the inductive action of thought. In fact, one of the present writers has heard of so-called spooks being driven away by such houses by means of scientific application of thought power along the lines now under consideration. For evil thought atmospheres may be overcome by means similar to that employed in turning the sunlight into a dark, damp cellar. Ghosts, in at least many cases, are not but stored up accumulations of past thought impressions and vibrations. The evil thought atmosphere of houses of ill repute have been known to linger long after the building has been taken over by a reputable business. Here also, scientific treatment would have proved efficacious. The thought atmospheres of stores, offices, and business places in general are often quite marked. In many cases, they act inductively upon persons entering them for the first time, creating a distinct feeling concerning the character of the place. In cases of this kind, it will be found usually that the spirit of the place is practically determined by the characteristic mental states and actions of those in charge of the business in question. The persons constituting the management establish the policy of the concern in accordance with their own ideas and feelings. The policy of a business concern usually is a representation of the character of those who direct and establish that policy. Moreover, that policy, by reason of its effect upon the employees, soon creates an actual spirit of the place, or a huge composite thought form built up of the characteristic mental vibrations of those taking part in the business. You have probably met with cases in which the management of a large business house has been changed either by reason of the business being sold out to new people or by reason of the owners employing some new man of strong character to take charge of the management of the concern. In such cases, there will be noticed almost immediately a change in the thought atmosphere of the place. In some cases, a complete change of atmosphere being plainly felt by persons visiting the establishment. The new keynote of policy sets into operation a new set of mental vibrations. An entirely new mental rhythm is established in the place. In the same way, changes of management sometimes lower the tone of a business, office, store, or bank, instead of raising it. Old patrons will be found complaining that the old place does not feel the same when I enter it. Large office buildings frequently have their characteristic general atmospheres independent of those of their particular office suites. The influence of a few tenants of strong character and marked mental tendencies, good or bad, will sometimes serve to establish a keynote of the building. Then, according to the law of attraction in the world of thought, which we shall consider later on in this book, other tenants of similar character are attracted to the building, and before long, the place begins to acquire a reputation and a character of its own. We have known office buildings which have attracted to themselves a class of tenants of such an undesirable character that more reputable concerns avoided the place, and persons become suspicious of anyone having suites in it. On the other hand, we have known of office buildings which fairly radiated the vibrations of success, solidity, and reliability. We especially recall the case of a prominent building in a large city in which a small group of active, successful men has served to set up such a center of success vibrations that the whole place became noted for the success of its tenants. If you will talk with persons whose business requires them to visit different large office buildings, they will verify the above statements and will give you many striking illustrations gleaned from their own experiences. In the same way, certain store or bank buildings have acquired a reputation for being lucky, while others have earned the classification of unlucky. There are stores in every city, the tenants of which for many years past have been quite successful and have earned money. There are also other stores in which practically everyone who has rented them has met with ill fortune and failure. These facts are familiar to every businessman who has kept his eyes open. In many cases, the facts just noted have been attributed to mere coincidence, while by others, they have been attributed to some supernatural or occult agency. But whatever may have been the explanation accepted, it is noticeable that most businessmen will avoid the hoodoo places and will seek the lucky ones. An understanding of the laws of thought radioactivity and of the inductive action of thought will serve to explain and account for phenomena of the kind just mentioned, and to bring such under the category of natural cause and effect. Moreover, a knowledge of these laws would have served to indicate a method of scientific treatment of the unlucky hoodoo places, which would have taken the curse off of them in a perfectly natural scientific way. As you have probably already inferred from the foregoing statements, not only do dwelling houses, business houses, office buildings, and public places have thought atmospheres of their own, which are felt by those who enter them, but also many villages, towns, cities, and even entire countries have their respective thought atmospheres made up by the composite thoughts and mental states of the individuals forming the inhabitants of the places. In old established communities, this is more noticeable because in such cases, time has built up a decided thought character for the place. But even in newer communities, the same law is in operation and its effects are manifested. If you will stop to think for a moment, you will realize that every town or city that you know has its own special character, its own spirit, its own atmosphere, and that each induces its own particular kind of feeling in you when you visit it. Each town or city, like each individual, has its strong points and its weak points, characteristics that you like and those which you do not like. But each is different. Each impresses you in a different way from the others. Towns and cities have decided individualities of their own. Their respective characters are built up of the composite thought influences of the past and present, these serving to attract to the place individuals of a similar mental trend and to drive away from the town those individuals who are not in harmony with the spirit of the place. Persons coming into a strange town or city are usually keenly aware of the change in the thought atmosphere and often are rendered quite uncomfortable by it. But in time, they either adjust themselves to the new conditions by taking on sufficient of the new influences and characteristics to bring them into at least reasonable harmony with their mental environment, or else they find the new conditions unbearable and are themselves compelled to leave the place. Sometimes, however, when by reason of a rapid change in economic conditions, a town or city is subject to a strong influence of new inhabitants, particularly when the latter come rapidly and in considerable number about the same time, then the thought influences of the newcomers may serve to overcome or at least to neutralize the old thought atmosphere, and in a short period of time, the thought atmosphere of the place is changed. In such cases, a person revisiting the place after a short absence is struck by the change and is apt to remark that a new spirit seems to pervade this place. Often also, the coming of a few strong individuals, men or women of positive characters and views, will serve to inject a new thought element into the atmosphere of a place and thus to bring about a perceptible change in its character and composition. As proof of the existence of such characteristics of different towns and cities, you have but to recall the impressions made upon you by the different places you have visited. You will find that in your book of remembered experiences, you have a distinct impression concerning each town and city visited by you. You may have even the record of a different impressions produced upon you by different sections of the same city. For instance, you have a strong composite impression concerning New York City as a whole, if you have ever visited that metropolis. And at the same time, you will have distinct impressions of various parts of Manhattan as a whole, of Brooklyn, the Bronx, and of Staten Island. Then again, your impression of Chicago will be entirely different from that of New York City. Each city has its own thought atmosphere, which is quite easily felt by you and which registers itself upon your mind by means of its inductive action. Different from either your impression of New York and Chicago will be your impression of Philadelphia. Still different is the atmosphere of Detroit, of Boston, of Pittsburgh, of New Orleans, of Denver, of Kansas City, of St. Louis, and of the other large cities of the country. Going still further west, you will find that the coast has its own unmistakable thought atmosphere, which is readily distinguished from that of the East, Middle West, or Rocky Mountain regions. Moreover, you will detect marked differences between the thought atmospheres of the different coast cities, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Portland, Tacoma, and Seattle. Each has its own characteristic atmosphere. Still more marked in their differences are the atmospheres of older cities, the cities of the old world. So pronounced are the respective atmospheres of London, Paris, Berlin, Vienna, Rome, Petrograd, Madrid, Budapest, Stockholm, and the rest, that an experienced traveler who had once made a long stay in any of them would recognize the feel of the place were he transported there in his sleep and awakened without being aware of the journey. The atmospheres of the great cities of Asia are quite pronounced, so much so, in fact, that often the traveler who once actually falls under their spell will thereafter, throughout his entire life, feel the East a-calling him. Australians claim that there is a something about their land which is met with nowhere else in the world, and for which they pine when away from home. And on the dark side of the page, many travelers have testified concerning the evil spell, the mental miasma which hovers over certain parts of the interior of Africa, blighting all who remain under its influence. There is a something in the air of places other than the familiar chemical constituents, and that something is perceptible to most persons and exerts at least some degree of influence upon them. In the hypothesis of the thought radioactivity and the inductive action of thought, respectively, we have an explanation of the apparently uncanny and mysterious emanations from and influences surrounding many old places of the Earth's history, the scenes of ancient civilizations long since vanished from human sight, which have left their traces upon the sensitive ethereal medium upon which thought registers its vibrations and from which the latter are reproduced by induction under favorable circumstances. The strange legends concerning old castles, ruins, ancient temples, prehistoric tombs, etc., need not be dismissed as mere fancy or as idle superstition. There is a perfectly natural scientific explanation of many such strange beliefs and traditions. There are two great principles of the activity of thought power involved in the phenomena which you have just considered, and of other phenomena which you have not as yet considered. It is necessary that you grasp the essential facts concerning such principles in order that you may arrive at an intelligent understanding of all such phenomena. These two principles are as follows. One, the principle of thought contagion, which manifests in the catching of strong thought influences in thought epidemics and mental contagions. And two, the principle of thought attraction, which manifests in the drawing power of thought, whereby strong thought vibrations tend to attract other thought vibrations of the same general character, and consequently to attract and draw to a common center different individuals of the same general trend of thought, and to produce and induce many other forms and phases of the attraction existing between thoughts and things, or between ideas and persons. In the next following sections of this book, the two great principles above noted will be considered in further detail.